here, but amidst the loss of David Modell and my friend, we're trying to find some joy and tell some stories. I'll tell you one thing. When it comes to the life of David Modell, it is not hard to find people with stories to tell. David interacted with everyone. David had some sort of a smile with everyone. Everyone had an opinion of David. David cared about your opinion to some degree. As I laugh about this, but it's given me a chance to catch up with people I really liked at that time in my life. We were all about the same age. We're all still about the same age, but 20 years older now. And here's a guy that I identified as one of my all-time favorite Ravens. I don't think I've had him on the program, but maybe one time since he retired many, many moons ago and ran off to St. Louis to try to win more championships with that greatest show on turf out there. We welcome the one, the only, Penn State's own, and is it pronounced Solon or Solon? I don't know how to say Solon, Ohio. We welcome the great Kim Herring back on to WNST. Kim, it's been too long, my brother. How's life down there in the sun in Florida?
I can't complain. It got cold here a couple weeks ago. It was like 60. So, we're struggling just like you guys up there.
All those guys from Cleveland, that's what they say when they move to Florida, right? I mean, that's your cheap shot. That's your kick in the nuts for all your friends back in Ohio and Pennsylvania, right?
Well, what's funny is I loved living in Cleveland, but you get tired of that snow. They just, that snow. It's a killer, man. It's a killer. So
we're both in our 40s now, Kim, so I understand that. I get that.
Very true. I mean, I was the first thing smoking, and I think I moved to Florida in '98, never looked back.
Well, right. And many do, and many have since. So some thoughts for you. I mean, you're a guy that didn't spend a long time here. You were here for 4 years. You did your turn. You won a ring. You went out to St. Louis, ran around with Marvin a little bit out in Cincinnati as well. And, you've long since called it a career. I mean, the guys of your era, it feels to me like for many of you, football feels like it was a long time ago. It's something you tell your kids about in pictures and videos. But then something like the passing of David Modell happens, and we all think, wow, we get the pictures out. We remember what we looked like and what we sounded like and what we thought and what people thought of the Ravens back then. I mean, you got drafted into this thing as a kid from Cleveland, right? And had to come here and work for Mr. Modell. I would think that probably didn't sit well in the neighborhood, right, Kim?
It didn't, but see, honestly, I took a different spin on it because I looked at it like this. Honestly, the Browns were my home team. So when Baltimore drafted me, in reality, to me, it was almost as if Cleveland drafted me because it was a lot of those guys were the same personnel. Ozzie was there, and when I got drafted, Ozzie and David Modell, I remember coming to me and saying, "Look, we've known about you since your time in Solon High School because at the time we were still in Cleveland." So it was a weird dynamic for me, but I mean, I got angst, but I had a lot of my friends from high school always tell me, man, just imagine if we were still in Cleveland, you'd been playing for the hometown team. And I'm like, I think that's one of the regrets I had is I can never come back home and play for the city of Cleveland.
Well, in playing for the Ravens and the Modell family, you were off in college, right? When the poop hit the fan in Cleveland, right? And I don't know where you were in your dorm room when you heard the Browns were leaving Cleveland and coming to Baltimore. But much like you heard and knew about David Modell long before you met him, right?
Right. I knew. Like I said, I knew about the franchise a long time ago. Actually, they moved 95, 96. Yeah, I was probably a junior in college. And so I was like, wow, that's crazy. I can't believe, Cleveland's leaving. But in essence, not being there at the time, I was in college, it didn't have as much of an effect until I got drafted in 97. Like, oh, my gosh, I cannot believe that basically the Cleveland Browns drafted me, but now we're in Baltimore.
Well, so and it wasn't. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I had a few ribbons from my high school mates. That's for sure. A couple people who never called me again, but it's like it's under my control who I get drafted by.
Right. And then you show up in Baltimore, and what you find is a team that's 4-12, right? You found that this young guy, Ray Lewis, was running around at a level that probably you had never seen at Penn State, right? And then, right. Vinny was sort of still here. Eric Zier was banging around. The team wasn't very good, but laying down the tracks of what would be Saragusa and Sam Adams and Michael McCrary and Rod Woodson and all those people that would come in. You had a lot of guys to hold your hand early early on. But first and foremost was you had this Cleveland connection, and you had Art and David, and you met David, and I think it was impossible to be out in that old building. David was in and out of there, and he was running around with businesses and trying to sell tickets, and the PSLs were on sale, and stadium blueprints were getting done. David was a pretty busy guy at that point, right?
He had to be. I mean, because you had to run into David. You had no choice. Because people who do not know outside of Baltimore is that the first facility that we had in Baltimore used to be the old police academy. So it was so small that you ran into ownership all the time. I mean, you had no choice.
There was only one hallway. There was nowhere for anybody to hide.
It was like, well, I guess we got to go. Hey, how you doing, Mr. Modell? Like, and just, okay, there's the owner. He's like, all right. So it was one of those things where it created an environment where everybody knew everybody, which actually made it more of a family environment. And I think it really helped us along the way because of the backlash of us moving, the team moving from Cleveland to Baltimore. We always had that, us against the world mentality, and that's just the way it was because, man, to go back and play a couple of those games in Cleveland in 90, 98, 99, man, it was rough because they put it this way, they definitely gave us their opinion.
Yeah, I was in the stands for those games wearing purple. I remember when the biscuits started hitting me in the back, the dog biscuits, of course, hitting me in the back of the head. I didn't take too kindly to that in 99 and 2000. But, for you, having won a trophy, got a ring, saw all that wonderful stuff that happened here, with the passing of David, I really went back to examine I was a young guy. I mean, it was all new to me. I was just happy to have a purple team, right? I was happy to be 4-12, as you remember, when you and Raleigh Richardson came out after we lost 37-0 to the Steelers on national television, and and Penn State lost to Charles Woodson's Michigan team up there in Penn State on the same weekend. I have the pictures of you and I and Wally at the barn that night. And I thought we were going to shock the world and beat the Steelers, and turned out to be a rather somber night, as I remember it. But then a couple years later, you're down in Tampa, the confetti's falling, you win a championship, and then you start to really, I wrote a book on it, but you start to put together, like, how did we get from 4-12 to winning a championship? And, you were there for all of the machinations of Ted going out, obviously Brian coming in, all of those legendary players coming in, the maturation of Boulware and Ray Lewis and Jamie Sharper and those guys around you. Now that you look back on it, I really do have to give David a hell of a lot of credit for all this stuff.
Oh, of course. I think the combination, I think they were a dynamic duo between David and Ozzie Newsome. I mean, because let's just be honest, they drafted very well. I mean, let's look at who they drafted in 96, 97, 98, 99. You're talking about, the Jamie Sharpers, myself, Peter Boulware, Ray Lewis, Jonathan Ogden, Dwayne Starks, Chris McAllister. I mean, we all started. So that was, to come out of those drafts and start and not just start having impact. And then the guys they brought in free agency who just stuck. We didn't have, between 99 and 2001, we didn't have a lot of guys who they brought in from free agency who is what they call bust. And so they were very selective on who they brought in to actually fit our team and fit our dynamic more than anything else. Because let's be honest, you were there. We had some goofy guys on our squad.
It was a hodgepodge of characters, I'll tell you that.
It was a hodgepodge. But you know what? But it fit us. That's the way it is. It fit us. We had guys who were more serious when it needed to be. We had guys, jokesters like Saragusa, But it's funny, as soon as we got in between those lines, it was like all business. But as soon as we came off the field, it was like, oh, okay, we're joking around again. We just knew each other really well.
When you look at the ring at this point, what do you think about?
I don't know. To be honest with you, it's crazy because people ask me a lot, and I don't wear it at all.
Everybody says that. That's the one thing that's pretty universal. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never been a symbolistic person. Like, if people ask me, okay, I find I'm bringing it out, but I still have it in my original case. Now, what I did is I changed it a little bit. I was able to go to the jeweler and make it mine platinum.
Oh, okay.
Because it lasts longer. It lasts longer, it looks better. But it's one of those things where I look at it and like, this is something I'm going to give my son, So it's one of those things where I want to try to make it more like an heirloom for my kids and keep it at that. But It's something that I did. It's something. It's great. It's a great point in my life. But it's one of those things like I'm not going to hang on it too much. Of that. That's who I am. But it's a great part of my life. I'm going to cherish forever. And like I said, I'm going to pass it down to my son and just keep it from there. Hopefully, I can make it heirloom. He will appreciate it just as much as me.
Got any weird interactions with David? When you think of David Modell, what do you think of?
David Modell was the type of person, man, you had to be on your P's and Q's because he's always had a joke around you.
It was always loose around David, wasn't it?
Yes. Not even loose. It's like he would cut on you, and you better come back because if you didn't, he'd cut on you again. So it's like, oh, okay. Because it's funny because when you first meet him, you're like, well, that's ownership. So, you might not want to talk about ownership. But in essence, when I start hearing Tony Siragusa start cutting on him, I'm like, oh, so he's fair game. Oh, okay, cool. I'm gonna cut on David too. And it just went back and forth, and it wasn't personal. It was like, oh man, look at them socks. You just go on each other. And it's like, wow, this dude's cool. Because usually ownership isn't like that, especially nowadays, because a lot of teams are owned by people who made a lot of their money outside of football. So they're more corporate.
Yeah, you don't run into that, and if you do, it's more like with a suit and tie and along the lines of business. I mean, David was down on the sideline chewing on cigars, waving a towel, getting the fans going. That's how some people have remembered him, and they think maybe that's a little goofy or forced. I tell people all the time, I mean, that's just who he was. I mean, he wanted to win. He loved the team more than anybody I knew.
Correct. And I'll be honest with you, this is the days before all the social media because you could almost relate it parallel to he was almost the first Mark Cuban before there was a Mark Cuban.
Wow.
In the sense of he loved his team genuinely. He was on the sideline. How many owners did you know at that time was on the sideline just waving a towel and acting crazy? They were usually in the box.
Well, yeah, and that's where he wanted to be, and it wasn't to be seen. It just part of, I would say to people back in the day, people would say, well, why do you sit up in the stands instead of the press box? Or, why are you wearing a Raven Hard hat or all the stuff that I did back in the day? I said, my dad died and this team never came here. I'm going to have fun with this team. The team was a gift to me 21 years ago to enjoy. And 21 years later or 25 years later, I'm still doing radio. I try to never lose sight of that, right? I mean, and I think for you guys out there playing now that it's all over with, it really was NFL, right? It wasn't for long. It seems distant to you, even though you've only been gone a dozen years or whatever it is, but it does seem like a different life for you probably, right?
Oh, a different life. Sometimes I look back like, man, I actually played this? I'm like, wow.
What was I thinking?
Because you're always so used to being integrated, being inside of it, that you never see it from the outside in. You see what I'm saying? You're always looking at it from inside out. So you never see like, wow, people act like this? Like, when I actually went to my first game when I retired, my first NFL game. I'd never been to one before.
So you never went to a Browns game as a kid, no?
Never went to a Browns game.
Okay.
Ever. Come on, man! I don't have money like that.
I'm just hearing you, man. I mean, you were from the area.
So, when I went to my first game, it was funny because I think I was the only one in the whole stadium sitting down the whole game. Like, why are you guys cheering? It was a 3-yard game. What's wrong with you people? Come on, man. Because I've always looked at it from inside out. I've never looked at it from outside in as a fan, quote unquote. I've always been a player. So I wasn't used to, being all hype and random. I'm like, wow, this is different. I'm not used to this. I'm like, man, this is tiring.
Yeah, my wife needs a nap after the game, and her voice is shot at. Yeah, absolutely. No.
I didn't have time.
Kim Herring is joining us here, Super Bowl champion from Super Bowl 35, and one of our great draft picks, and a guy I have not had on the show in a long time, one of my all-time favorite Ravens, and I'm trying to reach out to all the guys of your era to tell some stories, Kim. And, one of the parts of this is sort of catching up. Now, you're living down in Florida. You're doing some football-related stuff. I see you out on Facebook with your beautiful wife and your kids, but you're doing some community outreach. You work for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, correct?
Yes. I handle a lot of the community outreach for the organization, a lot of youth through Hillsborough County. We're trying to spread out actually to Orlando, too, since it's not that far away.
But
So
you live in the Orlando area, right? Correct?
Yes,
Okay.
I live in the Orlando area. Great for my 3 kids. So
But how many
we're
people
living
from
out there.
Orlando go to Tampa for games? I mean, it's only, 80 miles. I mean, it's not that far.
Yeah.
You can get there in an hour and 15 minutes on a Sunday morning, no problem at all, right?
Yeah. It's really not that bad. It's really not that bad. It's one of those things where people don't realize actually how many people commute between Tampa and Orlando, Orlando to Tampa. I mean, it's a lot of traffic, but it is what it is. I like it. Still involved. I still coach. I still coach football now, so I like it. It's nice. And now my 8-year-old son, is starting getting into football, so it's interesting.
What is that like for you with all the head trauma and all the stuff that I'm sure you and your wife and your family worries about? How many concussions did you have that you remember playing?
To be honest with you, I only had 2, and they were never the knockout. I don't know where am I at. It was what they usually, I think they reference to quote unquote call them dings, where you remember everything, but it's just like wow, your head's going. Your eyes are just in and out. You're like, wow, I just got dinged. I got to sit out.
You shocked that only happened twice to you that you remember?
Yeah, surprisingly, but yes and no, because like I said, I was very fortunate enough to have great coaches in high school and college who taught us how to tackle. That's all we did was tackle. We learned drills over and over, repetition. And so I rarely ever tackled with my head down. I remember Marvin would always say, hey, why are you chesting him up? I'm like, bro, that's the way I was taught. You chest up a guy and you drive him back. You just run through him that way. I just never put my head down. I never did it.
Well, I'm glad you're doing well. I'm glad the family's doing well. I'm glad you checked in. I'm trying to reach out to as many people with some David stories as much as what he's built. What really is amazing, you came into this scenario here, and we became fast friends. You come out and do the show with us from time to time. I remember you being at our draft party, I think the day we drafted McAllister. Does that sound right? Or maybe the next year? Yeah, I mean, but either way, all these years later, what the franchise has become in Baltimore, right? I mean, you work for the Buccaneers. They're trying to get people back there after winning 15 years ago, right? Baltimore, it's never wavered. I mean, I think that's one of the real strengths of this thing is 21 years after the Modell showed up here, that the Ravens owned Baltimore. When you were drafted here, this was an Oriole town, Kim. You know that.
Oh, heck yeah. The Orioles were, you got to remember, too, people don't realize when we got there, I think we were almost, a year or two after that Cal Ripken broke the record?
Cal Ripken was September of 95. The team came to the parking lot in November of 95. So, yeah, I mean,
exactly.
The Orioles were in the playoffs in 96 and 97 in the ALCS.
Yeah, we got there, and they're like, Raven who? I was like, oh, and then we had to play in the old stadium, and you remember that old stadium. That thing was Memorial. Oh, my goodness.
I love that dump. Don't make fun of that place. You're on
I'm
Baltimore radio, Herring. Don't pick on Memorial Stadium. Time will not dim the glory of their deeds.
But it reminded me of the old Cleveland Stadium.
It sure did.
Remember, the old Cleveland Stadium was old, where you're literally coming out of the bull deck of the baseball fair, and you're going, I'm like, man, this stadium is old. This is near Cleveland.
Every time I go out to Oakland now, the old dump that's still out there, that is Memorial Stadium. It's the last one left. People are like, why do you like going to Oakland, that dumpy stadium? I'm like, it reminds me of my youth, and I know when they blow that one up, that's the last one. There aren't going to be any more of those stadiums around.
Yeah.
Hey, man, take care of yourself down there in Orlando and the family and all that stuff. And, I'll look you up. We don't get the Buccaneers on the schedule this year, but, I'm all for sunshine down there in Orlando and Mickey Mouse and all that stuff. So.
Oh, I know you are. Oh, I'll give you a call. I might be around your area in the summer.
I hope to see you, man. We'll catch a ball game or whatnot. Be well, man. Great having you on.
All right, thanks a lot, Nancy.
Always one of my favorites, Kim Herring of Penn State, of Solon, Ohio, now in Orlando working for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It says on his LinkedIn, he is the Youth and Community Outreach at Tampa Bay Buccaneers, so one of the real good dudes. We're remembering David Modell here most of the week, and I'm sure when I get to the Super Bowl, there'll be even more stories about him. If you want to hear more, you can learn more at the Bayou Toyota Audio Vault. We got the videos up from our Night of Heroes last year. I've inked it a blog in his memory. I hope you you check that out and read that. I like to think that the WNST is here. I am here. You are here. The Ravens are here. And David Modell had a lot to do with that. So we're honoring him as I see fit here this week at WNST to the level that he deserves to be recognized. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram. I'm everywhere that you are, including Facebook Live as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. Anything you miss, you can find in the Bahia Toyota Audio Vault, including some throwback stuff with David Modell from 1996 and 97 and through the years. You can also get our morning newspaper delivered to your email inbox at 7 a.m. every morning. That's brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com, where it is still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life, and it's absolutely free to get that. Last but never least, any breaking news happens first, even sad, awful news on our WNST Tech Service. That is brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard, and Dennis will be here on Thursday driving you home, getting you ready for more football as we get ready for Super Bowl 51 in Houston. I'm Nestor. This is WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.